Welcome to the Coaching Gold Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rudy Jackson, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Dorian Cunion. Dorian, today we've got another great episode, and our topic is defining value. What do you think about that today?
I'm excited about this topic. You know, the coach that we have on is an expert in helping people find balance in life, and finding balance all starts with defining your values.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And so what we always do is we let our coach introduce herself. Our coach is Tamisha Williams. Tamisha, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm Tamisha Williams, and in terms of the coaching and stuff that I do, I help folks prevent burnout. So I specifically love working with BIPOC women and non-binary leaders to help them thrive in their career without sacrificing their wellness, which really stemmed from my own acute burnout back in my career and following my own steps to get well. And as I continued to work with other folks, realizing that was a journey that people needed to be on. So I currently do coaching and consulting around leadership wellness and helping people to, thrive.
Thriving. That's great work. It re-energizes us. It helps everybody we work with. And what we really want to know, though, is what led you to becoming a coach?
Yes. So my journey to coaching came through actually education, counseling. When I grew up, I wasn't one of those, I want to be this when I grow up. I knew that I wanted to do things somewhere in the field of education. I knew that I wanted to serve communities. So I got an education degree to have that background, and I got a family and marriage counseling degree to learn how to serve communities, and still didn't quite know how to get to the job that I wanted. I started doing work actually in college admission, and my eyes were open to a lot of the educational inequities that were happening. And through that work, I ended up really advocating for Black and brown students, which then led me into the world of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I didn't know existed. But I got my first job in an independent school as a DEI director and served in independent schools for about 9 years. And through that time, I didn't know what I was doing was coaching some of the faculty and staff members. I didn't know that I was coaching some of those young people, but I really enjoyed some of those one-on-one or small group moments in my job. And then my last position as a DEI director in schools, that next summer, I actually started my own consulting company. And it wasn't until 2 years into my company that I realized I love the work I was doing as an educational consultant around diversity, equity, and inclusion. But a lot of my joy was coming from working directly with my school contacts and helping them navigate some of the challenges and dilemmas that they had. So I went on to pursue my coaching certification and have fallen in love with coaching once I realized, I've been doing some of this. Now I want to do it with more skill and have more quality for the folks I'm working with. But that was my journey. It really came through education and counseling and equity work, and recognizing that through coaching, I could really help to serve some of the folks who are sometimes the most neglected in spaces and help them elevate their practices, skills, and get well in what they do.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, because as you mentioned at the very beginning, many people have the perception that you should know your destination.
Yeah.
And that's typically not the experience for 90% of people. And I think folks need to hear that and understand that it's okay, and just do what you're doing because you get to that place you're supposed to be, especially if you recognize your joy.
Yes. And that's what I followed throughout most of my career, is a lot of uncertainty, but having faith that, follow my joy, follow the energy, follow where I'm motivated, and just this belief that things would work out, and they have. So I just continue to do that.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, Tamisha, I get the sense that there's been this red path of passion of trying to serve others and kind of help people just enjoy work. And you started off at the system level, and now it sounds like you're working a lot more in the individual. Can you tell me the role that values play in just people managing the stress and the day-to-day challenges of being both an individual and a worker?
Yeah. Values play a huge role. When I mentioned that last job I was at, it's a school year, right? So I started in July. By October, I was feeling like a lot of tension. I didn't want to go into the workplace, which is not me. I love the work I do. I found myself finding excuses to be online. It was 2020, 2021, and not be there, physically. And I finally sat down. It was like October. I remember going through old paperwork and finding a core values exercise I had done with some of my colleagues. And I just went through it and I looked at my values and I was like, oh, no wonder I'm feeling so much tension and misalignment. My values are at odds with the place that I'm at. Like the work I was doing, the way that I was being asked to do it, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And from that moment on, it was like a light switch. Things didn't change like a light switch, but my realization that that misalignment was hugely impacting my emotional health, my physical health, my mental well-being led me to doing a lot more of that core values work and figuring out how to get aligned with my core values. And since then, it's now one of the first exercises I have all of my coaching clients do is let's do a core values exercise. Let me as your coach understand what your core values are, because regardless of the topic that you're coming to me to get assistance with and support with, those values are going to help me to help guide you. And also my hope is, as they did with me, help to illuminate for you those pathways to the choices that feel good, even though they're tough and challenging. But when I know that they feel good in my gut because they are a part of my core values, it made those challenging decisions and tough decisions a little bit smoother, if you will. So for me, defining values can, when you're thinking about people in their personal lives and also in their work lives, there's always so much tension and conflict, which is not always a negative, but core values for me help us to weave through those and navigate those in a way that feel good inside.
I love what you're saying as far as defining them up front. And one of the things I learned when I went into coaching was it's one thing for somebody to say, I value wealth. It's a different thing to understand what does that mean. And I can remember a client I was working with and she was like, wealth is important. And I was like, okay, money. And then I paused. I'm like, tell me more about what that means. And she was like, well, wealth in relationships, wealth in, financial that matters, wealth in fitness. And I was like, oh my gosh, you can't just assume what a value is to somebody. You got to really dig in and understand it at a high level.
Yes. And this is like as coaches, it's the moment I make an assumption, I have to check myself, say, go on and ask that question. Whether it be a negative or a positive assumption, whatever it may be. And it's those moments where, you unpack and learn so much more about somebody through what they share. But that has also been a really important part of the core values work I do, is making sure that a word that someone says, I can't just assume that it's how I would take that word or what I would take that word to mean, but truly an opportunity for me to find out from them, what does this mean for you personally? What's the connection to you? And it goes down pathways I would have never imagined had I not just asked the question.
That's great. As you were mentioning that early alignment activity, It made me think that someone on the outside who may be listening could kind of intellectually say, oh, okay, I have this list of core values, but it may not register to them what the next step is. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what those next steps kind of look like as you support and guide that client through that process of not only understanding their core values, but then how those core values then connect with supporting the issues that they're coming with.
Sure. Whittling down from a list of a lot of words to 10 and then to 3 to 5, it feels like, okay, I've done it. But one of the first questions I ask is, tell me how these core values show up in, your life or your leadership or your work. And listening to those answers brings up a lot. And for some people, it's a moment where they hadn't actually ever thought about it. And as they're articulating it, they're starting to already answer some of the wonderings that they were having coming into coaching, which is a beautiful moment. Additionally, I will often ask, like, which core values do you feel most aligned with? And then on the flip side of that, which core values are you feeling misaligned with? And hearing those questions also then kind of opens up pathways for us as coach and coachee just to start to examine those areas of misalignment and really thinking about what's one thing I want to do to get in greater alignment with this particular value, and helping folks understand that one, it's a journey. It's not, I mentioned light switch yesterday, but that was just a light switch of awareness, not that everything changes, but then understanding that like that journey, the joy that comes from each day, each moment, you choosing to do things in alignment with your values, how that just builds on top of each other. And so watching clients who have come in, I had a client who was, she didn't even know she was burned out. But as I started working with her and realizing it was challenging for her to name emotions, that she was actually pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like disassociating. So she was showing up, but because she wasn't yelling and angry, everyone was like, oh, things are fine. She was like, things are fine, without recognizing that there's the other end of that that's actually not well. And as we started working through and helping her get aligned with her core values, just every decision that she made that was it was pretty countercultural in the environment that she was in. It was countercultural to how she had been socialized, but it felt so good because it actually was alignment with her values. That was the breakthrough. And so I appreciate those moments of helping people understand that it's a daily choice, and it is a journey. It takes time, but that values alignment in the end really does bring about a level of joy and happiness that's sustainable for me.
Well, the one thing I really am glad that you brought out was the alignment of the personal values that many times can be misaligned with the culture that we work and live in. And that's one of the things that Dorian and I do a lot with our Power Six Leader System, is working around building that culture of teamwork, which again, some people could have personal values, for example, based on individual performance.
Yes.
That may have misalignment, and having the awareness and allowing that person to come to the decision of how they want to manage that, whether that is how much they want to participate within the culture, how much they want to accommodate their own values. And like, that could go many different ways.
Yes.
But, like you say, opening it up. So yeah, I'm really, really glad you touched on that.
Thank you.
So within the Power Six model, one of the first skills is motivate action. And inside of that, we spend a lot of time talking about values. And I'm going to bring up something that we both kind of saw last week, and I'm going to ask your point of view on it. So we were at a workshop, and a business owner, she had been in business for about 6 years. She stood up. She said, I've got a child at home. I've got the business. We're growing, and I just feel depleted. I feel drained. I'm struggling. Yeah. And she was trying to figure out how to make decisions within her business. What would you want a business owner like her to know about values and the role that it can play with just helping to, make choices and guide the business forward?
Yeah, absolutely. The first question that comes to mind, right, is thinking not just about her individual values, but also the business's values. And does the business have defined values? And if there are more than one individuals running that business, have you all talked to each other about your values? And sometimes those conversations in itself illuminate so much for whether it be a solopreneur, but also in this case, like a duo, and some of the ways in which we might be making assumptions about what each other needs. And so we're making sacrifices that nobody's actually explicitly said they need us to make. And we're also not voicing things because we don't want to, instead of having that conversation about, well, I really value this, and I know you do. And so because you do, I'm actually willing to take this on so that you can do this. So that would be one of the first things that I would want to know is just do you all know your values? Have you articulated them? Have you taken some time to examine them? And if so, can we revisit them? What's feeling misaligned, and uncovering some of those unspoken things that aren't being said because each person is trying to operate based off of, unspoken, if you will. And then I think the other thing I'd want her to know, like in terms of being in conversation and thinking about her values, it's again just that idea of like, what's one shift that you could make towards that ideal life that you'd like to be living, that where you see your work and your personal life integrated in a way that feels good to you. Because sometimes the ideal feels so big and different than where we are that it shuts down our system and our brain is like, that's not safe. We're not doing that. Versus us recognizing that like one shift can actually kind of break open. So that would be one thing I'd want to really talk with her about, is what's one shift that you could try this week that would feel like it's a movement towards what you're looking at.
I absolutely love that, and I love how you circled back to the fact that it was a partnership, because oftentimes, more relationships are damaged through, oh, let's go into business together, and then the communication's not there and the values haven't been hashed out. So really starting at the individual level, like let's define the individual values, but then we have to talk about, the business partners, the employees, and just make sure we understand where's their alignment and then where's their friction.
Yes. And the thing that comes to mind, I think about another client team that I'm working with right now. We spent last year with them articulating their personal values, then the values that they both saw were the values of the business because they hadn't articulated it, and then coming together and recognize, okay, we have some alignment. That's good. And then they actually then use those to decide how they wanted to move forward with the programming of their business. They'd come to me because they were just like, where do we start? Where do we begin? Like we're doing things, but we're just going through the motions. None of it actually feels like it's kind of, guided in this purpose. And so, yeah, especially folks who are working together, I think sometimes what I try to talk to people about is like, it's okay to do the awkward thing. We're not socialized at saying, let's get into a room, let's sit down, let's talk about our values. So it feels awkward, but I would much rather have the awkward conversations up front. That's like that go slow to go fast, because I know that if I do that up front, there's a lot more that's smooth afterwards than us having to backtrack and figure out where all the friction's coming from.
So Dorian, our guest coach here is using our language of friction, right? So I don't know if you know, but, part of our system, we talk about work productivity. Mm-hmm. And we have this wheelhouse idea that does exactly what you're saying. It's about understanding how other people work at their optimal level. Mm-hmm. And this notion that their expectations, their preferences that typically aren't hashed out, they're not considered, and friction occurs because we expect certain things of people to communicate in certain ways or respond. And that, like, much of that is values based. And so that really adds more language, adds more depth to what we talk about in the Power Six leader system around work productivity and that anchor concept of our wheelhouse syndrome. So thank you for pulling that together. See, we're in sync over here. We're in sync. I was going to actually dig a little deeper, but I was going to ask you more about what could people do right away or do tomorrow. But you actually provided, not only did you say, do you, get to know your values? Do you know your values? And where do we start? And what a lot of that I think happens is, like you say, it's not just an individual, but they're working on teams. Sometimes getting people to get the momentum they need, sometimes that's when the benefit of an external person to come in and do that, because it may be hard, and I hate to think of it as selling, but it may be hard to get others on board with the importance of the value alignment. And you got one person that's gung-ho, and I really think it's important, and these other people are lukewarm. And so I could really see the value of you coming in to help navigate that, because I think people get stuck. They don't know how to have a conversation. They don't want to smoke. They just want things to get better. And I think you gave us two really good things of what people could do next to get started, unless you have a really good exercise outside of calling you for, to be the mediator for it. I think that'll probably be better. Yes. Yeah. Call. Just
Yeah,
call.
yeah, just call.
Just make a call. Okay. All right. So we're going to transition to Dorian and I's favorite part where we get to see you ask questions because, again, I think there's some, maybe not fear, but there's some unknowns of, well, how is a coach, because first of all, people don't really know what therapy is, but they assume that this is like therapy and it's not therapy. So now they get to see how you would ask a question to a potential client. So we'll be your clients today, and you can ask us any questions you have.
The question I always love to ask, I asked it actually at the end of a consult of a first session today, is what are you doing right now that brings you joy in the midst of stressful weeks, stressful climates that we're in? What's something right now that's bringing you joy?
I'll go first. So I'm going to give two answers. I'm going to give one that's kind of professional, and then I'm going to give one that's personal. And I would say the professional thing that gives me joy, and I might get myself in trouble because people might be calling me and saying, like, give me a deal. But, because I'm self-employed, I own my own business, I have the flexibility that if somebody reaches out to me and they can't afford my services, like they've just gotten laid off or they've just gotten divorced or there's something financially that, my typical price just isn't affordable, I have the flexibility that I can discount. And I have a client right now that I did do that for, and just seeing the impact that the coaching has on her and knowing that she wouldn't be able to access somebody like me typically, but because I was willing to be flexible with my price, she's been able to, find a job very quickly. She has another opportunity and she's learning all this stuff. So it just fills my cup when I can do the work for either free or for a low price, because I just know that there's a lot of power in coaching. Yes. And, I just want to make sure that I'm helping people. When it gets to me just personally enjoy, I went to Italy during the summer and I came back and I was just super motivated because the food over there is just super fresh and there's all these things. So I have a garden outside and I've just been super motivated to re-engage with my garden and grow things and just be able to have things that are organic and fresh. So those are kind of my two pleasures right now.
I love that. Nice.
All right, so my joy. I've got a couple because I'm in higher ed. This time of year, mid-August, late September, students coming back to campus. That is a natural, just dopamine hit. I mean, seeing the students now, nowhere to park, it's traffic, people don't know where they're going. But once you get by that and you just see that energy of mostly young people who are going to classes and they're trying to figure it out, and they may be dealing with frustrations. I was going to a meeting and it's 5 minutes to walk across campus, and during this walk I see a young lady sitting on the stairs who appeared to be dealing with something on the phone, and it sounded like she was talking to maybe a mom or an adult, and she was just having this conversation. It was kind of heavy, and then I walk out of that building and I walk across the yard and I hear two other young ladies talking on the phone. Excuse me, one lady talking on the phone, and she was like, well, here at our college, the cute guy to cute girl ratio is uneven. And I'm like, you could get a little bit of everything, just walking across the yard at any college. So that just, being an educator, that brings me joy. Now, midterms and finals, sometimes it'd be a little different, but for now, it's great. And I think the second thing is that, and Dorian knows this of me, is I'm a builder. And so going on this journey with Dorian and kind of building out this Power Six leader system and looking at ways where we can support, ICF coaches, giving them another tool, and now trying to bring it to other sectors. It's just something that most people aren't curious about. And I just had a weekend with a good friend of mine, and he and others are like, when I go home, I just want to veg out. I don't want to think about anything. I want to, reset. And, for me as a builder, I'm just always thinking about building something. So those are the two things that bring me joy, along with, having, a daughter in college and a senior high school. So, yeah, so joy everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with what Rudy just said, my wife, feel like my wife looks at the relationship that Rudy and I have, like we're some teenagers that are in the garage. Like, I'm playing the drums, he's playing the guitar, and like we're going to make some music one day. And she's like, "Why are you guys spending so much time with it?" But it's to Rudy's point. It's like we thoroughly enjoy what we're doing, and just the things that I've learned from working with them, I feel like it's making a real impact with the clients that I work with. So it's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I did not include my wife in my joy. So we're gonna put that in there as well. And Dorian and I go way back, and so we have just built each other up. And so and what's interesting is that we have many points of alignment, and I think even though we haven't had a direct conversation about values, our values weren't assumed, and we were able to kind of work things out, and they actually have come out in what we've created. And so I already know kind of what he values, and he will challenge me to, if I say I value family time, and it's like, oh, let's get together on Saturday and talk, he'll push back and be like, hey, we said we weren't going to do that. So we're good accountability partners,
Nice.
and it's good for old people like me to have young people that we can talk to on a regular basis. So yeah.
I like being considered young. My kids make me feel like a dinosaur, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do what I can, man.
So Tamisha, before we kind of ask you to kind of wrap up, I do want to ask this question. So, what do you learn from your clients or even from us by asking that question you just asked?
Yeah. Well, one, additional values, right? Like, so I can hear some of the things that you all value, but also sometimes we can put our own personal values and they turn into judgments of what other people are doing. I had a client today who was actually talking about how she loves what she does, serving communities. She's passionate. She's like 3 or 4 volunteer opportunities that she's doing related to justice and advocacy work. And she was seeing that through a lens of capitalism, like, feeling bad about the fact that she was producing things and that all of her joy lied in producing things. And I helped her reframe. And I say, what I'm hearing is that you love creating to serve. And how does that reframe sit with you? And her mind was like, yeah, I'm not creating these things to extract from communities. I'm doing this work that I love, which may have me laid up at night and on the weekends and excited about it because I know it's serving a community. So when I heard you, Rudy, talk about building, that's the same feeling I got, is like, you all are doing this not because you're like, ha ha ha, what can we take from people? But it's the joy in learning, the joy in growing, the joy, and then also taking what you're learning and helping other people elevate themselves through it. So that's what I get from those questions, is when I hear the things that bring you all joy, it's also helping me to retune some of, again, any assumptions I'm making. Like, if we were to start this conversation, you were talking about, I don't really have much time. I'm spending a lot of time on things. My first thing, well, you need to give things up, versus hearing the why. Why are you spending the time? What value is it bringing to you? And then the solutions that we come up together, that support is actually more aligned with what you need than it is based on my own, lived experiences and the way I want to live ideally. So that's why I asked the question. It's also just good to see people line up and talk about the things that bring them joy. I often educate my clients on the fact that we have a negativity bias. It's a survival mechanism for our brain, but because of that, we can have 100 positive moments in a day and then 1 negative, and our brain is going to tune into that negative to make sure that we remember it so it doesn't happen again. But then we lose sight of the 100 positive, amazing things. So I love to always have my clients do some moment in that session that brings them back to like what's happening positive, what things bring you joy, what are you loving, what lights you up. And that reminder of like, oh yeah, there are some things. Like I can see the shoulders go down, I can see the stress, I can see the joy in their eyes. So that's another reason I asked that question.
So we're at the part of the podcast where we ask our coach to provide us information for our audience so that they can make contact with them.
The best way to contact me is through my website. It's my name, Tamisha, that's Tam as in Mary, Isha, Williams.com. And that website has, all the ways to contact me and to reach me, but also to learn a little bit about who I am and what I value. Additionally, another great way to contact me is through affirmationcarddeck.com, because I've actually been working on a project to bring wellness into the hands of leaders by creating a card deck that helps with wellness and growth as the Ubuntu Affirmation Card Deck. And so that is another way to find me, is by going to affirmationcarddeck.com and learning more about that product, a little bit more about the why behind the work that I do.
Well, that's great. Well, we want to make sure that every one of our listeners can connect with you. So we will post all that information when we send this to Spotify and to our YouTube channel. But before we go, Dorian, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank Tamisha for joining us. You have contagious energy. Like, I don't know how somebody could come into a session like feeling down and not leave like energized and feeling like they can get things done. So I appreciate you passing on your positive energy to us today. I appreciate the call out around talking about, and I'm going to label it taboo things, because I feel like 90% of the conflicts that we have are on the 10% of things that we won't talk about. And if people are willing to talk about their values, money, work preferences, then workplaces can be a lot better. So I feel like you gave us some gems today, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I thank you all for having me. It's always a joy to talk with other coaches and just also to talk about things that light me up, like values and leadership and wellness. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you for the work you're doing to help grow people. That's my thing, is I'm like, more healthy leaders in this world. So I appreciate you all for being the ripple effect to seeing that happen.
You're welcome. Rudy always asks me to make sure that I share my information, because I don't like doing that a whole lot. But if you're looking to contact me, my name's Dorian Cunion. You can find me on LinkedIn. My company website is www.yourpathexecutivesolutions.com. And I primarily work with small business owners. So if you're a small business owner and you're looking to kind of overcome some obstacles or kind of figure out your strategy, I'm there for you. And then secondly, really finding some real connectivity with individuals with ADHD. I just find that there's a lot of stressors right now. And if you do have ADHD, having an accountability partner, having somebody to help you with skill building can be super helpful. So if you're interested in learning more, reach out.
Look, you did it.
Yes, there it is. Well, we're going to wrap up the show. Everybody can reach me, Rudy Jackson, on LinkedIn. Our power6leader.com website has all the details for our system. We're really trying to grow our program with ICF coaches to give them another tool in their toolbox so that they can be more effective with their clients, so that clients can be more successful. So thank you so much for being here today. Have a great day.
Thank you.